In a world obsessed with rankings, two men dare to chisel greatness out of metaphorical granite, one wildly subjective opinion at a time. This show, every episode, we select four icons from a single topic and immortalize them in our own personal halls of fame. But it's not about what should be on the list, it's about what matters to us. Subjective? Absolutely. Debatable? Always. Set in stone? Until next week, welcome to the Mount Rushmore show, where your top four says everything about you. And Joe, this time we're swinging into summer with our top four picks for this week, man.
Good play on words there, Mr. Michael.
I like it. No, it's a good one. We'll talk about the topic here in just a second. Actually, it's probably not a bad time. There's not a whole lot kind of going on sports-wise or movie-wise. We had to kind of adjust fire here at the end, but I think we got a good one, Joe.
I do too. This was probably our most requested, um, but I wouldn't say my personally or your personally most familiar. So this one required a little more research, but that's the fun part of this podcast. What we learn, Mike.
Well, for sure, and I'll be honest, there was this one's kind of a hole in of what my general knowledge of things are in this particular area, and but that was kind of the fun, like you were just saying. Like I got to dig in almost all the time when we talk about a topic. I have things that were from my lifetime that my experiences color my decisions that I make, and this one there might be one or two that were something that I was aware of at the time, but the other ones I really dug into some and found some really interesting stories. So I'm kind of happy about it.
And I'm prefacing our base knowledge of this. So if people come back at us for missing, some obscure 1973 US Open, go easy on us, will you?
Yeah.
We're doing our best.
Yeah, this is not our forte. Well, speaking of that, Joe, go ahead. Why don't you tell us what is the topic this week and give us the rundown?
Yep. Well, welcome back. I missed you, Mike.
Yeah, I missed
Last
you
week
too.
was a fun one. Uh, we're gonna break down the greatest of all time in sports, movies, and everything in between on this show. But this week, we're going to honor one of golf's crown jewels happening this weekend as we're heading to the fairway for the Mount Rushmore of U.S. Open golf finishes. Um, Now, I'll say the U.S. Open isn't just another major. And I'm not saying that just as a proud American, but it is the ultimate test of a golfer's will, skill, and in the breakdown of this, we'll say sanity. The rough is thicker, the greens are faster, and the margin for error is microscopic. I will say a little bit of a history of the U.S. Open. It was established in 1895, so been around quite a while. Um, it is not quite, it's a little older than pickleball. Let's just say that. But the Open has been the stage for legends to rise and for many to crumble. So it's hard in picking this week because we thought biggest collapses, biggest comebacks, so we'll just make it dramatic finishes. But the U.S. Open's been one of golf's most punishing exams where par feels like birdie and every swing could mean really history. And it's where careers are made and hearts are broken. We've seen that a lot. As far as this weekend, all eyes are on world number one Scotty Scheffler, who has had an incredible year so far, and he's by far the most consistent machine. And then we got Xander Schauffele. Am I saying his name right, Mike? I've only read it, never said it out loud.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm sure it sounds good to me. So,
But he's fresh off his first major win. And Rory's always a factor. Don't count out young guns like I've heard the name Ludwig Aberg, or I'm just gonna say this Jordan Spieth, throw
of
his name
course,
out
yep,
there.
yep.
As he hasn't been as relevant lately, but someone that's had some history at this tournament. And the course expected to be unforgiving, tight fairways, brutal rough, greens, like I mentioned, that'll test all the putters. I'm expecting a classic U.S. Open golf this weekend. And it always leads at the drama. Some of the most iconic finishes in golf major history have come at the U.S. Open. So you're not just winning a major, you're surviving an onslaught in this tournament. That's why this week we'll celebrate our four most unforgettable finishes. So, Mike, you want to kick it off?
I do. And that was a great bit of an intro there, Joe. And it's so true. I think what you said about the idea of finishes, right? Like this comes down to, it's hard to say. Is it winners? Is it losers? Is it meltdowns? Doing some research in here, there's a lot of fun with golf. There's names, sometimes guys that have only ever won one major, and this was the US Open, but they go down in the history books. There's guys that have done it forever. And then there's guys that should win and then they don't finish strong. So I'm gonna go with my first one, and it's the one that I really remember, and it's Payne Stewart, 1999 at Pinehurst, number two. Uh, Two major things. First of all, he wins on the last putt on the last hole. So I mean, obviously that's pretty cool. It's a 15-foot putt, which I'm telling you, if I had to make a 15-foot putt, maybe 1 out of 30 on those if I'm lucky, you know. But these guys are pros. But he still does it, and he beats Phil Mickelson, who was, by the way, on our last
He
podcast
was. And
by
he
one
may be on
stroke.
this one for a different reason. Who knows?
He might be. Payne Stewart, though, you may not know the name, but I guarantee you've seen the image. The iconic fist pump becomes this enduring image. It's wonderfully odd, is the best way I can describe it. It's this dude. He's got a cut off sleeves on his rain jacket. He's punching into the air with his right hand, and he's also awkwardly like bringing up his right foot in this weird like angle at the same time. In fact, it's such a moment that's been etched into time that it's actually been etched into a statue. So there is a statue at Pinehurst number two of this fist pump. However, the reason the statue exists is kind of a tragic story. A few months after this amazing historic victory, Stewart would tragically die in a plane crash. So it's a bittersweet one, but Payne Stewart, 99, that was a pretty big one.
Yeah, I think of the image more than
Hmm.
anything.
Of course.
That fist pump. And I love Phil Mickelson. I put him in my last Mount Rushmore for athletes post 40. Even if we had a post 50, he'd be in there for what
Right.
he did. But I'm glad he wasn't defined by this because many have a hard time coming back from a collapse like that. But credit to Payne Stewart. He'll always be remembered for that moment. And that's what US Opens are for and what make them so special. Great pick.
Perfect. All right, Joe, what do you got? Your first pick here.
So I only picked ones that I really remember. I mean, we could go way back before both of us were born, but the one that sticked out most when curating this list was Tiger Woods in
Oh yeah.
2008 at Torrey Pines. And Tiger was a legend at this point still, having been on pace to, at the time, we thought break Jack Nicklaus's major record. And this was one of his most iconic defining moments. It was Tiger on one leg, a torn ACL, a fractured tibia, and somehow the man forces a playoff with Rocco Mediate by draining a 12-foot birdie on the 72nd hole. They went into overtime, sudden death, and he go on to win the next day. This wasn't just a win, it's a myth being written in real time. Legendary. And I remember that year was the year of Tiger. The ESPYs, which was one of my favorite talk shows or award shows,
Oh yeah.
gave him Athlete of the Year after that performance. Unfortunately, he didn't go to win another major Tiger until uh, over close to a decade later. The infamous personal mishaps all came to a close shortly after that. So that was not only one of his most iconic moments, but I would say the apex of Tiger's career in 2008.
And we'll share this one. And I think this is a consensus pick, Joe. I mean, this is one of those moments. And you said, Tiger on one leg, the injuries that he had. He's at this moment in his career that he's had a long career at this point in time. And then, like you said, I mean, this is the kind of the last big time moment for Tiger Wood, realistically. So yeah, it's got to be on that list.
Yeah, we got it next.
All right. Well, you're not digging into the past, but I certainly am. I love
Fair
history,
game.
and and I obviously was not alive. in 1913. This is pre-World War One, and a dude named Francis Ouimet. It doesn't look, by the way, if you're like Ouimet, that's a French spelling. It starts with an O because they pronounce their syllables all wrong. But 1913 at the Country Club. This is a story that's going to go down in history. It's immortalized in film, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But Ouimet's a 20-year-old amateur. He's not even a professional golfer. And golf is still in full swing, obviously. That's the pun intended here. Two British legends are going to play at this U.S. Open. Harry Vardon, Ted Ray, who had just previously won the last year's U.S. Open. They are going to end up into I mean, it's such a close match. They end up in an 18-hole playoff. It goes down, and Ouimet is going to basically crush them by like 5 strokes. And this 20-year-old amateur is going to defeat these two legends of the sport in it's a true David versus Goliath tale. And if you're sitting there going, well, that sounds like it should be a movie, it was. The Greatest Game Ever Played is the name of the movie starring Shia LaBeouf. It is certainly not the greatest movie or even sports movie ever made.
No, forgotten about.
It did not make it onto our Mount Rushmore of sports movies. And let me check my notes here, Joe. Yeah, no, it wasn't even on my radar at the time. It's not a terrible film, but it's not one of those great movies. But it is a great story, and that's where it's going to make my list. 1913, a 20-year-old amateur defeats two golf legends, true David versus Goliath, and it kind of brings golf into the mainstream, at least in North America. So it kind of sets the stage for not only the U.S. Open, but the history of golf moving forward.
Yeah, when I think of that, obviously I wasn't around either, but I know of the story, and when I think of it sparked a golf boom in the U.S.
Mhm.
It was certainly the ultimate underdog story. And the shame about the movie, because I really like Shia LaBeouf, even today.
Well, it's not. And I think maybe my review there might make it sound. It's not a terrible movie. It's just not one of those that you're going to put on regularly or like the great sports movies. So,
Well, when it has the title, The Greatest Game Ever Played,
right.
you're setting yourself up for some high expectations.
Nonetheless, a cool story. All right, Joe, hit me with your next one.
My next one is the most recent one, and that's last year's
Oh wow.
2024 at Pinehurst, Bryson DeChambeau.
Oh yeah.
So he entered the day with a three-shot lead, but saw Rory McIlroy roar back on the back nine. There was a very dramatic bunker blast on the 18th. He struck a 55-yard bunker shot to within 4 feet. Then he calmly sank the putt to win at 6 under and win by one. It was very symbolic of the clutch shot affirmed his evolution. He embraces precision under pressure, Bryson, and he marked a major highlight for Liv's profile because we all want PGA and Liv for the love of golf to come together. So the fact that they're able to play on the same green, and it felt like a Liv versus PGA moment. It really did. And it felt like Liv winning was going to make us one step closer to that merger. And he only hit 5 fairways on Sunday, but he showcased grit and elite short game prowess when it mattered most. And Bryson also helped his reputation. You know, there were many years he became known as difficult. He got really big and short with fans. This was his very much comeback moment to win back fandom in the eyes of all golf spectators. So kudos to Bryson. That's my number two.
And what a great, like you said, it's the great comeback kind of story. I mean, even if, the game, but just even the fact that, from a character standpoint for Bryson, to get that kind of, almost like your monkey off your back. I love you bring up Liv, and the PGA and all of the stuff that's been going on over the last handful of years here. And as the golf fans are all in agreement, merge these two things together. And of course, at that event, you kind of get to see some of the splashes of that. And it's going to be interesting how all of that stuff plays out.
I agree. Who knows? It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen making decisions. I mean, it's been announced, it's emerging, but what it looks like, TBD.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I got
Mhm.
one more here. This is not somebody, this
Yeah, two more, Mike.
Well, okay, well, no, I shared, didn't I share? I had your Tiger and I had Payne
Oh, you
Stewart.
shared Tiger. I missed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And so then I just did Francis We Met, and I'm gonna roll off with more one within my lifetime. 2006 at Winged Foot, and a guy named Jeff Ogilvy. Now, if you don't know the name Jeff Ogilvy, that's okay. He won one and only one major championship. This would have been it in 2006. However, Winged Foot in the 2006 U.S. Open is more notorious for the absolute meltdown of one Phil Mickelson. So we had him on the list twice here. Um, Mickelson had a
Oh,
chance to win it, led by one shot going into the final hole. All he needed was par, and he does not get par. He doesn't even get bogey. He hits double bogey on that hole. In fact, there were two other golfers after Mickelson's meltdown who also could have won if they had parred, and they also don't par. Everybody is going to basically bogey that or double bogey that final hole, and Ogilvy is essentially going to win by default. Everybody in the entire U.S. Open that year are going to finish over par. This is going to be Ogilvy's only major championship, but it's probably more famous for Mickelson and his famous quote from Old Lefty when he says, his famous quote where he said, "I am such an idiot." But like you said, Joe, luckily these things are not the career definers for a guy that's had such a long career.
Mike, I remember this one greatly, and we share Mount Rushmore for this one. Um, that riding a streak of two majors, one stroke ahead, on par, merely a par on 18 to win. And I do remember the I am such an idiot. And it's hard. Poor Phil. He got his flowers
I
last
know.
week, but obviously Ogilvy capitalized to win by one. And Phil's misplay remains one of the most gut-wrenching near miss moments in major history. Um, yeah, shame of that, Phil. But hey, you're still at Mount Rushmore somewhere.
And actually, you know what's funny is I kind of liked now that I'm all wrapped up here, we still got one more from you, but I kind of like this one, Joe, because golf sometimes isn't even about the guys that win it. Normally, that's what we're looking for is in most of
Yeah.
these sports things. We're going, oh, this guy won this, or this is this, this great performance. But golf, it's almost just as much about the meltdowns sometimes, and the lucky streaks and these guys that win this one big one, and that's their one claim to fame. It's an odd sport in that way.
I agree because when I think of that tournament, I don't think of Jeff Ogilvy. In fact, I don't even remember his name till I researched it. I only remember Phil in the collapse because
I had to
Phil
look it
obviously has
up.
a
Yeah.
greater legacy and more history at U.S. Open, but sometimes it's the collapses that stand out more than the comebacks. It's interesting.
All right, man. Well, finish it off. Try to score at least par on this last one. So,
Well said. Well, I'm gonna give Rory his
oh yeah.
flowers because I obviously losing last year at the U.S. Open. And then his last finally win the Masters. He's kind of become back in everyone's praises because he had a streak there where he was collapsing. But we have to remind ourselves of the early McIlroy when he came on the scene. And I'm going to remind you of the 2011 U.S. Open at Congressional.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
weeks after a heartbreaking collapse at Augusta, he was 22 at the time. He silenced critics by dominating the field. It was a record-breaking performance. He was spotless for 4 rounds, culminating in 16 total, 268 to win by an astonishing 8 strokes, shattering U.S. Open records. Notably, he set the lowest 36-hole score ever, 131 and 11 under, on his way to cruising to victory. And this helped launch a legend in many people's eyes. His play there announced him as a golf's next generational superstar. And fortunately, he didn't have as many majors wins as we thought between now and today. He kind of got the monkey off his back in this year's Masters, but he's still been dominant top five for the last decade plus in the top of people's minds in the eyes of golf.
This is one of those sports moments, Joe, where it's an absolutely amazing performance over a stretch of days in a single tournament. Where I mean, there was accolades being, people were showering him with praise that you don't normally hear, like poised beyond his years, and this is the next great generation of a superstar, for somebody who, of course, a lot of it was well earned, but it's encapsulated in this lightning bolt of a performance, and it's one of those unforgettable, absolute unforgettable moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you want to round home your four? I'll do mine, and then we'll close it out.
We'll close it out. All right. Well, I had Payne Stewart, 1999, the one stroke on the final hole to win it all with the infamous, notorious fist pump, uh, immortalized in the statue with a little bit of a tragedy after dying a few months later. I also shared with you Tiger Woods. I got Francis Ouimet, 1913, and then we shared as well Jeff Ogilvy, but mostly the Phil Mickelson meltdown in 2006. All right, Joe, what do you got?
Yeah, we're gonna share two of them. We got Tiger 2008 and Phil's collapse in 2006 together, and then I'm also gonna throw in the list last year's Bryson DeChambeau and 2011 Rory McIlroy. And for me, these four finishes define what makes the U.S. Open special: heartbreaking defeats, painful comebacks, and heroes being born. From Tiger's broken leg triumph to DeChambeau's clutch bunker escape, Rory's redemptive record-setting run, and then Phil's agonizing collapse. Each moment carved itself a legend to me, and they embody why the U.S. Open demands not just skill, but it's a mental game, fortitude and resilience under pressure. And Godspeed to all the folks playing this weekend. We might see heroes that we know today fall, might see them rise, or we might see new heroes come to light that we don't already have on our radar. But I'm excited for golf now this weekend. Gave me something to watch.
No, it's great, and like you touched all those bases, and it's so important to understand that like this game has a long, beautiful history of moments, and the U.S. Open makes a lot of those. And what's great about it, like you were saying, watching this weekend, more history is coming. We got the next ones, always the next time around. All right, well, you heard our picks, but the real question is what would you carve on to your mountain? Until the next episode, he's Joe Mintz. I'm Mike Mintz. And this is the Mount Rushmore Show.